Hello, and welcome to the Metta Hour podcast with Sharon Salzberg. I'm Lily Cushman. I produce this podcast, and today we're coming to you with a whole new series centered around kids. We're launching the series today in honor of Sharon's very first children's book, Kind Karl, a little crocodile with big feelings. The book is co-authored by the wonderful Jason Gruel and is coming out on December 9th. So we're doing this series as a way to kind of birth the book into the world, but we've had a lot of requests over the years for conversations that center around mindfulness, meditation, loving kindness, how all these tools can impact children of different ages, as well as the family systems that support these kids. So we're really excited. This is going to be a many episode series. We're doing the first one today with episode 272. So before we dive into the first episode, I want to tell you a little bit more about Kind Karl. Karl is a really adorable crocodile. This is an illustrated picture book that Sharon has co-authored. It's for 4 to 8-year-olds, and it's actually an adaptation, a children's adaptation of Sharon's first book, the very beloved Loving Kindness. So this is a toolkit for young 4 to 8-year-olds to learn about loving kindness. And there are just delightful illustrations of Karl and his many animal friends that he goes to school with. So we're just excited to kind of venture into the younger community. And I know many of you listeners are parents, are caregivers, are aunts and uncles, are grandparents, are teachers. So this feels like it will be a really wide-reaching book that taps into a whole new audience. So the book is coming out December 9th, and you can actually pre-order a copy right now. Everyone who does pre-order will receive a special gift as part of our thank you to you. Pre-orders have a really great way of supporting books. It determines how many different booksellers will stock the book, and also impacts just how many books are even printed. So if you want to support Sharon and her endeavors, pre-order is a beautiful way to do that. And you can head over to Sharon's website to learn all of the things about the book, to see some of the illustrations, and to just share the good word. So that's SharonSalzberg.com. Okay, so let's get into our first episode of this series. Sharon sits down with the wonderful Susan Kaiser Greenland. And Susan's actually been on the podcast once before, but it's been about 5-6 years since that time. She is someone who I really think of as a pillar, as a mindfulness educator who works with children and adults, but has really pioneered some early work of bringing secular mindfulness into the classroom. She was part of the Inner Kids model, which was founded in the early 2000s. She's also just been involved in different research around the ways these tools can affect kids and young brains, young bodies, giving them tools to regulate, to learn emotional intelligence, all of that incredible work. So we're thrilled to launch this series with Susan because she is such a powerhouse in this arena and has just incredible ways of kind of translating adult skills to different younger populations, whether that's teens, young adults, or young children. And it's fascinating to see kind of how these different techniques get translated to different learning modalities like songs, games, things like that. So kids can access them in really fun ways and really organic ways so that they can really enjoy learning these incredible tools. And we'll be running this series for a couple months into the winter, so there's a lot ahead. I also want to mention that Sharon's doing a variety of different events for the launch of Kind Karl, so you can check out her schedule as well. Okay, so let's get into this kids series, a conversation with Sharon Salzberg and Susan Kaiser Greenland.
Hello, Susan, and welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Sharon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
It's been quite a number of years, I think, since you were last on this podcast. I think 2019 was your first appearance, and so much has happened since then. It's really wonderful to have you back. You're in Brooklyn, I believe, right now?
Right now, yeah.
Well, I'm in Barry, Mass, so a little bit further away, but it's a glorious autumn.
Yeah, same time zone.
Same time zone. It's true. And you felt like the perfect guest for today. We're launching a brand new series on the Metta Hour, meditation or mindfulness for children. And it just seemed so perfect to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm excited about your new book. I just read it, and I just love it. It's fabulous.
Thank you. Kind Karl, the crocodile who learns kindness. So I think you were the very first person I knew of in the West to talk about bringing techniques of mindfulness and meditation to children. But I know your early work started in law, while you also began volunteering in schools teaching secular mindfulness. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about your meditation journey.
Of course. And, when I was one of the first, if not the first, it just gives you a sense of how old I am, probably more than anything else. But it's all good. I've got to tell you, I started meditating. Well, Sharon, I think I started meditating when my husband, who is well and in the other room right now, got a pretty lousy health diagnosis and prognosis.
Mhm.
And he actually took me to learn to meditate because I was so anxious trying to take care of a baby and work and him that I was making him anxious. So he thought it would be a good idea for me to meditate. And my experience with in-person meditation wasn't too successful. I was just too restless. But I started to be able to drop and ground myself listening to your very, very early Loving Kindness tapes. And Jack Kornfield had some Path with Heart. And I don't know whether Joseph's tapes were kind of bootleg tapes or I don't know what they were. But I somehow got some of Joseph's tapes. And it was listening to those practices that served as a bridge for me to actually begin to practice. And then I moved to Los Angeles and started studying with Ken McLeod and studied with him for years. And now I study with Mingyur Rinpoche. But what happened with kids is I had two little kids, and one of them especially was a little bit restless and a little bit on the less regulated side of the attention spectrum. And I thought I was learning a lot of practices about attention in my own meditation practice. So I thought I would try to adapt them for him. And that's how it started. And then I started volunteering while a lawyer. And one thing led to another until I wrote my first book, The Mindful Child.
Well, you really were a pioneer. And I, by the way, say the same thing about myself, that for all the accolades that I get, it's really because I've been doing one thing for more than 50 years, so the years add up. So it was in the early 2000s that you helped pioneer the introduction of secular mindfulness into classrooms through the Inner Kids model. And I wonder if you can share more about that and what was really that turning point where your focus began that kind of child development.
Well, what happened was I really saw that my son took to it, but not in such a formal way. I mean, at that time, there were no children's meditation cushions or anything like that. And remember, this is still relatively early in my meditation practice. So I was at that point practicing one-pointed concentration, looking at an object. And he kind of toddled into the room and was interested in it. So I got a rubber duck and a green frog, and I got a little pillow, and I just put them next to me. And he started just coming in and sitting there. And he'd sit still for just a minute. And then it was early in the morning before I went to work. So then he'd just kind of tumble over and go to sleep. I, of course, thought he was a Buddha and he was reincarnated. I later learned that this was, when I started learning more about developmental psychology, that this was just very healthy attachment theory at work. And he knew his mom was in the other room and he came over and hang out with me. But nonetheless, I did see it was helpful for him. And so I started volunteering in his class. And then, you know how this happens, Sharon, it happened to you too. I remember it's word of mouth, especially in the early years. Oh, here's this lady. She's doing this. Can you come in? And that's how it started.
Yes, kids, this was before social media. This is before, So, what it reminds me of is they say in the legend of the Buddha's life that after his enlightenment, when he had 60 enlightened disciples, he sent them forth into the world to teach. And his instruction was, for the good of the many, for the benefit of the many, for the welfare of the many, you should be teaching. So he was talking about motivation, but then he said, and teach in the local idiom, which was always fascinating, and so it really kind of elevates this idea of almost a hybrid approach. It's classical understanding, well motivated, and adapting it to fit those you're working with, like the local idiom. So I'm very curious about, in effect, the local idiom you discussed in one specific inner kids model, one practice called the ABCs, referring to attention, balance, clarity, and compassion. That's ABCC.
Yeah. We ended up dropping one of those C's just because it got a little cumbersome.
Which one did you drop?
The clarity is far, But, and I know you're familiar with this. I mean, it again is tracking. My law practice was really helpful, just to back up a little bit, because at that time, going into public schools, frankly, now going into public schools, you had to be incredibly careful about, how we were presenting these concepts. And so the law practice really did help me look through that lens and be especially careful about that. And the classical framework is awareness, love and compassion, wisdom, often thought of awareness, wisdom, compassion. And I modified that in a secular way to attention, balance, which is the wisdom component, but really in a relative way, the wisdom kind of, being balanced emotionally and skillful means, that kind of thing. And of course, compassion. So the whole program, even though we called it mindfulness and the mindful child, it really was about these seeds of attention, balance, and compassion, and weaving them through daily life through activities.
It's interesting because that's also replicated in some work in vicarious trauma, working with caregivers and people who in a way are on the front lines of suffering, that what they would want to cultivate in doing a program would be attention, balance, and connection is the word that they use. So
it makes sense.
Yeah, it's a very powerful model. So the inspiration for this series, as we kind of referred to before, is the publication of my first children's book, co-authored with Jason Gruhl. It's called Kind Karl, A Little Crocodile with Big Feelings. And the book is, thank you. I have a little toy crocodile. If this were a visual, I'd hold it up at this point. The book is for kids 4 to 8 years old. So I wonder if we can start looking at that age, and how do you approach mindfulness for young children?
Yeah, well, 4 to 8, big difference between 4 and 8. It's a wonderful age to work with because at that age, they are really beginning to get very, very interested, and they are engaged. And often it's a little too early for the eye rolling that comes when you get into the tweens and the teenage years. So it's a wonderful age to work with kids. And I have always found it most helpful to work with kids through activities and also using children's books. So books like yours or activities that are like mindful games, things where it's not all about just staying still or feeling your breathing or listening to sounds, but there is associated with that some play and then some practice and then some sharing, some talking about what the experience was and application, applying it to real life. And for those classical Buddhists out there, you'll see the connection or the parallel there with view, application, or experience meditation, and just adding the overlay of playfulness there because they're kids. But what I really learned, Sharon, is that so many parents who would come to the classes or who would come for a private and for their child would leave saying these simple, clear practices, games, activities for kids were actually useful for them because
Yeah.
they caught up in so much concept, so much thinking, um, in the more adult practices. But here, if they could play a little bit, sing a song, do some activity and rest, they could actually connect with that attention, balance, and compassion.
So the term playful mindfulness, which I really appreciate your dedication to it. What does that look like in practice? You just said singing a song, or is it movement? Like, what is it?
Yeah, it's two different things. One is it's all those fun things. It's singing a song, it's moving. It's going with what is going to make this enjoyable for the child. So some children just want to settle in and very quietly and just sit and listen to sounds, and other children are up running or walking or moving around all the time. So tuning to what it is that the child in front of you is responding to and then going with it in a playful way. So we do have songs, we have games, we have activities, there's movements, there's jumping jacks. So that's one piece of it. And the other piece of the playfulness, when it actually is settling into meditation, is the idea of using imagination in your practice and also a sense more of effortless, a sense of the idea of, kind of going with the flow and not resisting that idea.
So I want to pick up this idea of imagination, because when I found, like, for example, working with different scientists on helping them to some extent form a curriculum for loving kindness meditation, which we'll get into in a minute, with children, I found like I had, in a way, to be very concrete, like trying to describe safety, may you be safe, as a phrase we might use in loving kindness. It would start with, what does it feel like when someone holds your hand and helps you walk across the street? We call that safety. So,
That's
like,
beautiful.
making it real, in a way. But I also think about the role of storytelling and how throughout history, if we look at the Buddhist teaching, it's actually the sutras, it's stories, has been integral for so long for understanding and especially teaching meditation. So wondering if you could say more about the role of storytelling or imagination in helping children connect with mindfulness.
Well, storytelling is so much fun, and that also can be part of the playfulness. Like I said, using children's books or also using classical stories. Like the farmer, the son, and his horse is one of the favorites. That kind of thing. Imagination. It's a full body experience. It's not just picturing something in your mind, which of course that's part of it, but it's also just trying to see if you can bring up or feel the sense of the wind on your cheeks or the sense of the sun on your shoulders or hear the sounds in the room or taste the chocolate chip cookie. So the idea for safety, for example, would be to encourage a child to imagine a place where they feel, as you said, safety can be a difficult words, but someplace they feel very comfortable, where they feel cared for, and then go through the sensory experiences and see what they recall and what they associate with that safe place. And then that becomes their home base. And then you can go back to that place anytime, anywhere.
And what are some of the maybe surprising changes you've witnessed in young people of different ages who are practicing mindfulness consistently?
Well, one of the things that I think is really important to remember if you're new to this work, it's true across the lifespan, but especially with kids, you know, very rarely do we have children come to us who are coming because they want to learn to meditate. Usually somebody else thinks it's a good idea. And they think it's a good idea because they want to fix some problem that they think the child has, which the child may or may not feel is a problem, and frankly may or may not be a problem ultimately in the course of the child's lifespan. So, with that, I think it's really key for everybody to remember that sometimes you get a big change, but usually the changes are incremental and sometimes you don't notice them at all, but they really do come along and build up over time. And what I think is the most predictable way of telling when change is happening is when there's either a little bit less reactivity or the reactivity doesn't stick so long. So there can be some quick reactivity, but somebody can get over it more quickly, or maybe somebody's a little less reactive. Where it usually shows up in a school is on the playground or in the lunchroom. Even just I'm volunteering at Mingyur Rinpoche's school in Nepal, and I was talking to some teachers online the other day. And even there, one of the things that they noticed first was in the playground when one child is upset, or perhaps there's a conflict between two children. And this is about the age that your book is oriented toward.
Mhm.
The friends came up and started to talk to the children who were fighting about the just like me practice to try to give them a
Mhm.
sense of he's feeling this just like you, that kind of thing. So often you'll see it happen in a conflict on the playground, not necessarily by the people who are involved, the children involved in the conflict, although sometimes, but often by their friends as a support system. And another common one we see is um, kids in the back, little kids in the back seat of the car starting to sing the breathing song when their parents are fighting in the front seat. We've heard that story a lot. Little kids coming out with the mindfulness bell and ringing it when there's some discord in the house, that sort of thing. And the science does show that you can tell that learning is actually taking hold when the young children are taking the learning out of the classroom and applying it in their daily lives.
That's so amazing. So is it an English language school in Nepal or is it in Nepalese?
Well, it's actually 3 languages. I mean, they're teaching Tibetan, it's in Nepalese, and they're also teaching English. But Sharon, if you can ever get over there, it's really just a wonderful, wonderful project.
I was thinking of sending books over there first,
Oh,
before schlepping
absolutely.
myself. I was wondering if I needed to get it translated into Nepalese first.
No, 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 no. No, all the teachers are English speaking. They would love your books.
Okay,
They
great.
would love your books. And
Well,
maybe we can get you on a Zoom.
oh, well, definitely. That's easy.
That would be great.
I live on Zoom.
Yeah.
And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe Nepal is somewhere in my future, but I haven't been on an airplane since March 4th, 2020. So
Wow.
that's a whole story in itself.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would love to send over books or be a resource in any way that I possibly could. It's really exciting. And I'm wondering, we've really been talking about different mindfulness exercises, and I'm wondering about actually loving kindness or compassion building exercises.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's key. Remember attention, balance, and compassion.
Yeah.
And then a set of life skills, quieting, which is basically settling and grounding, and nervous system regulation, focusing so that you can quiet and then you can see more clearly. And when you see clearly, you're able to reframe, and you reframe toward caring and connecting. And that's not just caring and connecting with other people, it's also caring and connecting with yourself. And these life skills are like building the muscle that helps you take compassion and kindness out into the world, or building the muscle that helps you develop the balance so that you can see experience more clearly, and then reframe toward in your actions and relationships towards caring and connection. So we do all sorts of things from activities, to help kids learn to let go of feelings, things like the pink bubble activity, where you imagine your difficult feelings in a pink bubble, and then you watch them. Again, you bring in the imagination and you visualize, you watch them float away, but then you add to it a wave, which is also some movement, and you wave goodbye to the difficult emotions and you wish them well. So we're getting across that piece of letting go and wishing well, and even wishing difficult things well. So that's one of my favorite of the compassion building exercises.
It's so interesting. I was just speaking to somebody in her 70s, suggesting that she might put difficult feelings in a hot air balloon. It just came to me. I
That's
didn't think
great.
about the pink bubble,
Yeah.
or wishing well. But I found, like the little bit of experience I've had, say, teaching my goddaughter when she was very young, that she had a kind of affinity for loving kindness, thinking of kids she liked, thinking of kids she used to like, but was mad at that moment, and like wishing them well. It actually struck a chord that seemed deeper than doing mindfulness exercises, although those were very helpful as well.
Yeah, I think they're all different, and it's developmentally, they're developing somewhat different, mental and social, emotional, and academic muscles. One of the fun things I like doing with loving kindness are, in this program, we just call them friendly wishes, sending friendly wishes when you're walking. So with each step, you send a friendly wish out, and the prompt can be to send it to yourself, send it to somebody you love or care about, send it to someone more neutral, or send it to somebody who's challenging. And that again couples movement with the practice, which is very helpful for some kids.
And the reason I think I brought up my friend in her 70s with a hot air balloon is because what you're doing with children is offering them tools that they don't age out of,
Yeah.
that these could be lifetime tools they could return to again and again, maybe with
That,
different forms or
yeah,
modulation, but it's there.
I think I remember a animated video that you voiced. I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah,
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 where it was like loving kindness on the subway ride, right, or
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, where all of the different people who were coming in and out of the subway car, I might have it wrong, the little animated character would wish them well, and these exercises they lighten and expand the heart, and they are developmental. I mean, they do build this muscle towards this view and this way of being in the world.
I'm intrigued, by your mentioning parents, or caregivers coming in and being influenced. And I'm wondering if it becomes like a whole network, of influence, and are there ways that families then kind of create a home environment that could more support emotional resilience and compassion in their children?
One hopes so. I mean, we know that and I think I also heard you teach this once too. Of course, that tells you how long you and I have known
Yeah,
each
yeah,
other and I've been going to
yeah,
your talks. But if one aspect of a system changes, the whole system changes, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's fantastic if the kids learn in school, and then they bring it home, and then there is a ripple effect. But honestly, for the mindfulness and meditation and the awareness practices and love and compassion and wisdom and joy, for that to really take hold, it helps enormously if the parents learn themselves. It's not like taking a piano lesson, giving your child a piano lesson where you can make dinner in the other room and they can learn piano, and whether or not you can play it doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
Children learn more from what they see than what they hear, and from what their parents are doing than what their parents are saying. And so if the parent is less reactive, kinder, more compassionate, not just in connection with the child, but also in connection with the rest of the world, the child will pick up on that.
And I know you also worked on a UCLA research study on the impact of mindfulness in education. I wonder if you could share some of those findings with us.
Yeah, that was one of the very early research studies. Um, it could have been the first two, with which was peer reviewed, which is kind of the gold standard in research. And it showed that there was an improvement in executive functioning among elementary school children. And that's what they were really testing for. They weren't looking at the compassion part of the puzzle, the loving kindness and compassion. They were looking at executive functioning in a school based, and that there was an improvement in executive functioning in the children after a relatively short program. I think it was twice a week for 8 weeks. And that the improvement was greater in the children who were on the less regulated side of the attention spectrum. So, for instance, for children who had more difficulty with the executive function, they showed even greater improvement than the baseline. So it was a important beginning step in the studies. There's all sorts of studies out there, not nearly enough. And what we're learning from the different studies really is what we need to work on next and what we have to study next. Because when you think of mindfulness in the classroom, um, first of all, mindfulness programs in the classroom are rarely all mindfulness practices. They usually do include seeds of awareness, love, compassion, and wisdom, um, or attention, balance, and compassion. And so, really being able to identify what is what are the components that are most active and most useful in these programs. So there's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of wonderful people doing it.
I want to point to our listeners to the really vast resource library you have on your website, which is both for for kids, for adults, and educators. And I wonder if you could share with us some of the most popular resources that you offer there.
Well, one of the things people really like are the shout out blogs, which I'm hoping to do one of you for your new book. I've done one for you before.
Yeah, that's right.
People do like reading about all of the different thought leaders. But as far as actual practices, um, the universal themes, I think the most looked at page consistently year after year are the universal themes, are the themes that cut across wisdom traditions, that that help you embody and develop a wise, loving, and compassionate worldview. Things like humility, things like patience, things like discernment, things like effortlessness, things like the backwards law, the law of reversed effort, that sort of things. And people are really intrigued by that. And that is, I know you were going to ask about the book, Real World Enlightenment. And that's what I wrote about in that book, which was the third part of the program, the Inner Kids program. There were the activities and the games. And then there were these universal concepts that we also teach. So again, tracking, view, practice, application. The universal themes really are components of the view or the framework for understanding the way things are in the world and in ourselves.
It's so interesting. I went to Florida once to teach and just happened to be in the house of someone who was a school teacher. And she said, oh, we have a mindfulness program in our schools. And I said, well, what do you teach? I was so curious. And she said, like, if a kid says, I can't do that, we tell them to add the word yet. Which I thought was so interesting, both
That's great.
That was seen as mindfulness, which is wonderful. And also what an interesting message,
Yeah. Yeah. And it ties into so many of the different universal themes, from open-mindedness to patience to, to reframing. So it's really brilliant. And then immediately what comes to mind when you think of patience, for example, are children's books that also teach that same theme. So when you couple children's books with a a lesson on a universal theme that really brings that theme to life.
So is this what you mean by the 6 life skills, or is that a different list?
The life skills are the ones I said before. That's
Okay.
the focusing, quieting, seeing, reframing, caring, and connecting. So those are the skills that we use to help develop these muscles that bring out into the world all of these qualities that, come from the frameworks and the practices of classical practice.
I think that's so great because it also takes something that could be more abstract and makes it real, in those
Well, that's the
ways.
thing, because I started working with kids, the combination of focusing on kids and being a lawyer, which a lot of being able to write as a lawyer is writing, complex concepts plainly in plain English. So that was the focus then, and it has continued because it's helpful to so many people, not just children.
Well, I don't know if you feel like singing us a song. Maybe
No.
you do,
Oh my goodness.
but I
Well,
know
what,
you have
oh,
songs
I've
as resources. You don't have
I
to sing it.
do. Oh, well, let me think. I haven't sung in a long time, but this one comes I from a universalist minister. Um, but I like it a lot. And then what's great about this song is that you can sing it in rounds. So you can have the kids sing it in different rounds. And it just is breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And that's it.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I put you on the spot that way,
No,
but
it's fun. I'm sorry for your listeners to have had to
no,
do
it
it.
was great. It
But
was beautiful. And what an interesting exercise. It just hits a different part of the brain.
yeah, it really does. And there's a lot of these little songs have movements attached to them. So we all know that full body approach when you include movement with singing, with thinking, with picturing or visualizing, you light up so many different circuits of the brain. It really does help kind of learning take hold in your mind and your heart.
It's so great. And you also are the author of several books. I do want to talk about your most recent book, Real World Enlightenment, which is described as an antidote to the chaos of modern life. And I'm wondering if any insights from working with young people informed some of the adult-focused teachings in that book.
Oh, all of them. All of them. I mean, what I've learned from working with young people is that it doesn't really matter the age. What matters is that you say things simply and plainly and that you relate it to the context. So whether it's the context of where they're living or whether it's what age they are or the situation they are in life. And that's one of the reasons why in all these years, I never wrote a curriculum. I never wrote on Monday you do this, on Tuesday you do that. I always went with this model framework so that it could be more responsive to the needs and the desires and the goals of the people who were curious about it.
So your book really hits home with the notion that helping ourselves is so clearly one way to help those around us. But for many caregivers, and when I started working with caregivers, I had I think, a kind of narrow sense of what that word meant. And then I was doing a program actually at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. for caregivers, and people would start calling. This was a long time ago. Everyone was calling. People would start calling and say, well, I'm a school teacher. Do I count? Could I qualify? Or I'm doing this. I'm taking care of a child. And, can I qualify? And I began to realize that term was actually much bigger than I had been assuming. So as a caregiver, it can be very hard to take the time to do any practice or resilience training. And you're a mom. I'm wondering how you carved out that time, if you carved out that time, in a way that you feel, has a lesson for other people. And how did that balancing act of bringing everyday enlightenment into your life feel to you? I mean, you described a period in your life where you're taking care of your husband, taking care of the children, taking care of your work, all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I've had different phases of my life where I've been able to do different things, and there have been plenty of times when there just wasn't the time or the energy for formal practice. Although I have done a lot of formal practice, and I am a huge advocate of it. But what I'll say is that that's where these universal themes and brief moments of awareness or brief moments of compassion really matter. And it's also, and those universal themes and the brief moments of awareness and compassion matter regardless of whether you're doing a lot of time on the cushion or whether you don't have time for the cushion. And that's just reminding yourself, really looking at your experience so that you can tell the moments that you can interrupt the stories we tell ourselves or our habitual patterns and tendencies. And at that moment, to drop in some kind of a brief moment of awareness, which has a grounding effect on our body and on our nervous system. And then to remember one of these universal themes, like patience or like discernment. Is this really helpful, for instance? Or like open mindedness and not knowing. We really don't know all the causes and the conditions that came together for this moment. And so once we ground ourselves, we can then remind ourselves of that. And that has a way of helping us shift toward a more wise and compassionate response to whatever's happening. So that kind of dropping into brief moments of awareness and compassion throughout your day is really key, I think, to learning to embody this. And then, I was determined. So I did find different periods in my life when I was able to carve out early morning practice or carve out retreat time. But in order to do that, I needed to enlist some help from other caregivers.
Hmm. I think the word determination is really key here, because what I usually say is that we can bring these practices into our regular old lives, even when they're pressured and demanding. But it takes tremendous intentionality. It's not just going to happen. There's very little cultural support. Often you're dealing with systems, the education system, the healthcare system, that are not that easy to move or even, hear your needs met, hear your voice heard, have your voice heard in some way. It just takes a lot of intentionality to remind yourself of what you really care about and that
Yeah.
you're going to try to bring it to life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
So I know you're part of some new and exciting programming. I don't know if that also includes the school in Nepal. Anything you can share with us?
My main focus right now, I'm at an age now where I'm moving toward retirement. I'm not
Uh-huh.
fully retired, but I'm punching 70 in the mouth. So I'm not working in the way that I was working before. Most of my effort now is going toward volunteering for the school project in Kathmandu
Uh-huh.
and Mingyur Rinpoche's program, and also writing. I still love to write, so I enjoy writing newsletters, and I write some articles for Lion's Roar. And I think I do have a contract to do a little more writing, but
Oh.
I haven't quite figured out what it should be yet. So I don't want to just repeat myself over and
Yeah.
over again. So
Yeah.
I will wait.
I know I have to, for myself, and when I think about writing another book, I think, well, you need more things to happen, like
Yeah.
something has to move, but I
Yeah.
have
And there's no
confidence it
rush,
will.
right?
There's
Yeah.
no
There's no
rush.
rush. Yeah.
Maybe tell us some more about that school. What are the ages of the
Oh, the
kids in
school is wonderful.
Kathmandu?
Yeah, the ages are it's basically an elementary school from kindergarten through what would be 8th grade. Right now, the Kathmandu school is all boys, but
Mhm.
the school will be they're building another school that will be both boys and girls. And then It's really based on a model. We're creating a model where we are integrating Buddhist frameworks through all grades and subject levels in subjects. So the idea is that rather than having and the way that it's being written is that it could be, again, it's a model format, so people could take pieces of it that are Buddhist inspired or take the full Buddhist teaching and see how it integrates into math or to science or to history or social studies. So the idea is eventually to get it so that it's not a standalone separate teaching class or something, although there are monastics there currently teaching what they're calling ALCWJ, awareness, love, compassion, wisdom, or joy. Eventually, the idea is to integrate it through the classroom teachers, through the hard subjects. And with the classroom teachers focusing mostly on the view and the application, leaving the meditation to people who are trained meditation facilitators. So it's an exciting project. Of course, it's Mingyur Rinpoche, who is like the most brilliant, sweetest, loving, fabulous human. Just like his brother, Sokni Rinpoche, and the two of them have this huge interest in schools. So it's a big project. It's in the early days, but I don't know when it will fully come into fruition. It may be years away, but I have a lot of faith that these two brothers will really make a difference in education together. The two brothers being Mingyur and
Sunny
Sokni
Rinpoche.
Rinpoche.
Yeah, because Sunny Rinpoche has a girls' school, right?
Yep.
In Monterey, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing, really.
Yeah.
So I've loved talking to you, being with you. You really are the very first person I had heard of, to be considering and amplifying mindfulness practices for kids. And it was just so interesting. I was like, oh, really? Look at that.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've got to tell you, looking back over the years, it's certainly changed a lot. And it's had its ups and downs like everything, but it's one of the consistent aspects of this work is just the joyful nature. When you're in the room, sitting on the floor with kids or out on the playground, and also with the teachers who are so heavily burdened with pressures from their own work with the students and pressures from the administration and pressures from the parents and pressures from home. There's just, I think, no more important place for anyone who has any extra energy and love and expertise to pour that into than our schools.
So great. So I'm wondering, as our time together draws to a close, if you could lead us in a practice of some kind. I was thinking I could go lie down and put my crocodile on my tummy and watch it go up and down, which is one of the exercises I know you've led.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Sure. So where we are right now, we are in New York, I guess you're not in New York, but we're in the Eastern, right now. We're in the Eastern time zone. Both Sharon and I are in the Eastern time zone where it's getting towards evening. So how about we settle into something that's more evening related, that's a little bit more grounding and helps us transition into the evening. If you like, you can take a meditation posture, relaxed posture with your spine straight-ish, kind of loosely straight, and your muscles with the intention for them to relax. They can be in your lap. Your hands can be in your lap if you like. Your feet flat on the floor or cross-legged if you like. Or if you've had a busy day or if you'd like to stand up, feel free to just stand up. And if you have a lot of speedy energy, which I often do, you can just shake your arms, shake your legs, and then settle into a posture of just kind of swaying from side to side at a pace that feels comfortable to you. And once you feel comfortable, I would love it if you took your attention and you moved it to some inner experience. It could be your breathing, or it could be sounds. Like right now, I'm hearing a sound from outside in my window. So I'm listening to that. See if you can just find an experience and stay with that for a while. Now, if you're anything like me, I wouldn't be surprised if there's thoughts and feelings coming up. And if one of those thoughts and feelings are something that's just a little bit on the negative side, something you'd like to let go of, or if something doesn't just come up that you'd like to get go low of, see if you can bring to mind something that you'd like to let go of. And see if you can imagine whatever that emotion is, or whatever that challenge is, or whatever that pressure or difficulty is. Just imagine it as something that you can put inside a bubble. So it could be a rock that you put inside the bubble. It could be a old shoe that you put inside the bubble. It could be some kind of a cranky creature that you put inside the bubble. But just imagine whatever is bothering you, that you're taking it and you're putting it inside this light, airy pink bubble. See if you can get a sense of that in your mind. What does that look like? How light does that bubble have to be able to float with your cranky, bothersome emotion inside? But that bubble is that light. So just imagine that that light pink bubble is now floating up into a beautiful blue sky with all sorts of fluffy clouds. And just let that cranky emotion go. And you can lift up your arm and you can wave your hand and just wish it well. So goodbye, cranky emotion. Goodbye, conflict or tension. Goodbye. I hope you're happy and peaceful and well, and just move on and float away. And I'm going to watch you go. And after your bubble has floated away, you can bring your attention back into your body. Notice if there's any tension. I can feel some in my shoulders. I'm going to lower my shoulders. See if you can relax around the tension and breathe. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And if you like, you can wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes.
Wiggle, wiggle.
Wiggle, wiggle.
Wow. Thank you so much for the practice and for coming on the podcast today. It continues to inspire me to see the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, Sharon. It's a mutual admiration society. I just can't get over all the great things you're doing. And I truly love your children's book. And I have a huge collection of children's books at home. And I can't wait to add this book to it.
Oh, well, thank you. And we will talk about my somehow shipping a whole bunch to Nepal. Somehow it'll work.
Oh, that would be great. They would love that. They would love that.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining us, and take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Sharon.
Hey, folks. Thanks so much for listening. If you're still with us, you've come to the end of the podcast. So if you'd like to learn more about Susan's many different offerings, she's got some really incredible tools on her website. You can head over there. It's susankaisergreenland.com. That's SusanKaiserGreenland.com. LAND.com. And for all things Sharon, to learn all of the great details about this forthcoming children's book, Kind Karl, to pre-order a copy or just help us spread the word, you can head over to SharonSalzberg.com. This has been the Metta Hour podcast, brought to you by our great friends at the Be Here Now Network. May you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, and may you live with ease.